Welcome back again. Going to get into a couple of pieces of the information here as we go through each one of the 5 seals of the day. Getting prepared for our oracle. Spectral moon. Electric wind. Okay, so I find it nice and also inviting that the sun is in that primary helping power position of the storm. And it's also very relevant, I feel, that this particular storm is also guided by the storm. The reasons these are is because there is kind of like an inviting energy that's kind of like showing us the energy of tomorrow as the crystal sun is about to come to bear. And so it's like the sun energy here is talking about what we're releasing that will allow us to really embrace that sun energy. And that sun energy can really be defined by like the eye in the storm. It's hyper simple. It's actually pretty easy to sustain. But if we get tripped up, sometimes we can find ourselves in the raging vortex again. And so I feel that dynamic is deeply expressed by how we're guided by the storm. And so it may be really easy to just keep getting tripped up by that whirling vortex or keep getting caught into it. It may not always be chaotic, but there is kind of like almost like a forced lack of control. And that can really define the aspect of dissolving and letting go. And as we let go and as we like surrender, then we find ourselves in the eye of the storm again. Things simplify and the sun shines through. And that can start becoming like our way marker, our waypoint, to be able to really be able to, I wanted to say lunify. And well, that's really interesting because that does bring me to the moon. Lunification. This is an aspect which I find directly reflects the intent of this wave spell, which is talking specifically about the moon energies because we're in the moon wave spell. And so the kind of lunification, as we let go, we find this deeper aspect of ourselves. We find this place in ourselves that listens. We may find this place in ourselves that cries. We may find a place in ourselves that finally gives way to a certain level of frustration and realizes something about oneself. There are deeper cycles in the more sensitive aspects of oneself, and reflected or compared or in complement to the aspects reflected in today's storm, which is the liberating aspect that we come to the more subtle, more emotional, more needy places that may be hidden in our life. And that the storm, which is also like the raging water, the moon is the still water or the non-moving water. And so it's like the torrent and the depth, the motion and the still are represented as the two watery forces. And so very much like the eye of the storm, while the sun can represent the kind of beaming light coming through, the moon is kind of a representation of the nature of this stillness. One is like a clarity. The sun is kind of representing a clarity, and the moon is representing stillness. And so they're both kind of a reflection of one another. And so in the eye of that storm, you have clarity and stillness. This comes directly down to the wind, which is our electric wind. And it's kind of interesting. The electric tone really kind of signifies lightning bolts within that storm. This crazy torrential tornado thunderhead with blasts of lightning just going off in there. And really the shearing effect, the pressure, the feeling of that wind. And that's all in there. And so I feel in this respect, the wind really represents the force and almost the gravity or the pressure that this particular storm energy is taking on us. And it's a very electrified, very active, very on kind of feeling. And so it's also saying that in these like more later times of the day, these real aspects of activating new forms of communication, dealing with potentially sharper emotions, because the wind can have in it certain aspects of sharpness or quickness. It can be very blustery, not unlike the storm itself. We could say that the storm incorporates the wind as a far more accessive, like it's very easy to access, a far more accessive blusteriness as part of its naturalness, because the storm is naturally in this way. And this, the wind does represent it without the water. And so the moon also represents the water without the motion. And so it's kind of interesting that the wind is naturally a very dry thing. Though it can carry the moisture. And so this also may talk about like how emotional situations are coming up today, that in the wind those emotions may be drying out a bit, while in the time of the moon they may be a little higher. There might be more juice, more water to yourself as represented by the moon, and that can kind of dry out a little bit with the wind as that begins to move, or at the very least kind of transfer some of that emotional or wet type of energy around the scene. Okay, so that's what comes up for me today. Stay tuned for the Mind Pyramid Meditation.